Sarah Chen was a journalist for a major American newspaper, 32 years old, with extensive experience covering military operations in various conflict zones. Chen had been assigned to Vietnam to cover the war from the perspective of American military personnel. Chen had embedded with American units, had observed American operations, and had reported on the American military experience in Vietnam. In August 1968, Chen was assigned to embed with an Australian unit to provide coverage of Australian military operations for her American newspaper readership. The assignment was intended to be relatively brief, approximately 1 week embedded with an Australian unit operating in Phuoc Tuy province. Chen arrived at the Australian firebase and was briefed by the commanding officer on what to expect during her embed. The commanding officer explained that Chen would be accompanying an Australian patrol on a multi-day reconnaissance operation. The patrol will be moving deep into jungle terrain, the commanding officer explained. The operation will involve extended periods without rest. The pace will be slow and deliberate. You will need to be prepared for physical and mental demands that exceed what you may have experienced with American units. Chen, who had embedded with American units and who believed she understood military operations, was confident that she could handle the demands of the Australian patrol. The patrol departed the firebase at 0500 hours on the first day. Chen was positioned in the middle of the patrol, behind the lead scouts and ahead of the rear security element. The patrol consisted of 8 soldiers plus Chen. By 0900 hours, Chen was beginning to understand that Australian patrols were different from American patrols. The pace was extraordinarily slow. The patrol had covered perhaps 2 kilometers in 4 hours of movement. The movement was not easy. The terrain was difficult. Chen was struggling to move quietly while maintaining the slow pace. By midday, Chen was exhausted. The patrol halted for a brief period. The soldiers consumed cold rations without preparation. The soldiers drank from collapsible canteens. The soldiers appeared completely unfatigued despite the demanding morning of movement. Chen attempted to interview the patrol commander, a sergeant named Duncan, about the patrol operations. Duncan was willing to talk, but his responses were brief and focused on the operational requirements. "We move slowly because speed creates noise," Duncan explained. "We stop periodically because movement requires rest, even when moving slowly. We focus on remaining undetected. Everything else is secondary to that focus." This operational philosophy was similar to what American Special Operations units were beginning to adopt. But experiencing the philosophy firsthand was different from reading about it in military doctrine. The afternoon brought additional challenges. The terrain became steeper. The vegetation became denser. Chen struggled to keep pace with the patrol. Multiple times, Chen fell behind and had to be helped by patrol members to catch up. By late afternoon, Chen was questioning whether she would be able to continue the patrol. The physical demands were greater than anything she had experienced with American units. The pace was slower, but more demanding, because the slow pace had to be maintained for extended periods. The patrol halted at approximately 1830 hours and established a defensive position. The soldiers arranged themselves in a security perimeter. The soldiers consumed cold rations without any preparation or cooking. Chen was permitted to rest, but rest was difficult. Chen was exhausted. Chen was sore from the day's movement. Chen was questioning her decision to embed with the Australian unit. At 2200 hours, the patrol commander assigned watch positions for the night. The patrol would maintain security throughout the night, with soldiers rotating through watch positions. Chen was asked whether she wanted to maintain a watch position or whether she wanted to rest. Chen indicated that she wanted to rest. The patrol commander assigned her a position in the security perimeter where she could rest while maintaining awareness of her surroundings.
At approximately 200 to 300 hours, Chen was awakened by the patrol commander.
The patrol was preparing to move. The night movement had been planned. The patrol would move through darkness toward the next operational position. Chen had not anticipated night movement. Chen was exhausted from the day's movement and from minimal sleep, but the patrol was preparing to move, and Chen was expected to move with the patrol. The night movement was extraordinarily difficult. Moving through dense jungle terrain in complete darkness was terrifying. Chen could not see obstacles ahead. Chen could not see where to place her feet. Chen could only follow the sound of the soldier ahead of her. The pace was even slower than during daylight. The patrol moved perhaps 1 kilometer during the night movement, which required 6 hours. By the time the patrol halted at approximately 0500 hours, Chen was beyond exhausted. Chen had been awake for nearly 24 hours. Chen had been moving through extraordinarily difficult terrain. Chen was physically and mentally depleted. The patrol halted for a brief rest period. The soldiers consumed cold rations. The soldiers rested. Chen attempted to rest, but found sleep impossible despite her exhaustion. At approximately 0800 hours, the patrol resumed movement. The second day of the patrol began with Chen already exhausted from the previous day and the night movement. By midday of the second day, Chen was struggling to maintain any level of functioning. Chen had been awake for approximately 36 hours with minimal rest. Chen was moving through difficult terrain at a slow pace that required intense focus to maintain. Chen began to understand what the patrol commander had meant when he had warned that the operation would involve extended periods without rest and physical and mental demands that would exceed what she had experienced with American units. This understanding was not an intellectual understanding based on military doctrine. This understanding was a visceral understanding based on direct experience of the demands of the patrol. By the end of the second day, Chen had been awake for approximately 48 hours. Chen had moved approximately 6 kilometers through dense jungle terrain. Chen was beyond exhausted. The patrol halted for the night. The soldiers established a security perimeter. The soldiers rested. Chen attempted to rest, but found that sleep would not come despite her extraordinary exhaustion. At approximately 2200 hours, the patrol commander checked on Chen. Chen expressed concern that she was unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. The patrol commander, the same sergeant named Duncan who had been leading the patrol, sat beside Chen and made a simple observation. "You have been awake for approximately 48 hours, Duncan said. Your body is exhausted. Your mind is beyond exhausted. But your mind is too active to permit sleep." You were thinking about the difficulty of the operation. You were thinking about the exhaustion. Stop thinking. Accept the exhaustion. Accept the difficulty. When you stop fighting your condition and accept it, sleep will come. This advice seemed absurdly simple, but Chen attempted to follow it. Chen stopped attempting to force sleep. Chen accepted the exhaustion and the difficulty. Gradually, over the following hour, sleep came. Chen slept for approximately 4 hours. When Chen awoke, she felt somewhat restored despite the minimal sleep. The patrol prepared to move. By the third day of the patrol, Chen was beginning to understand the Australian patrol methodology on a different level. The patrol was not attempting to accomplish the operation as quickly as possible. The patrol was attempting to accomplish the operation while remaining undetected. The slow pace was not inefficiency. The slow pace was tactical necessity. The extended periods without rest were not sadistic punishment. The extended periods without rest were operational requirement. This understanding transformed how Chen perceived the patrol. Rather than viewing the patrol as unnecessarily difficult, Chen began to view the patrol as appropriately designed for the operational requirements. By the 5th day of the patrol, Chen had developed a new appreciation for what Australian soldiers were capable of doing. Chen had been awake for extended periods without adequate rest.
Chen had moved through difficult terrain at slow pace that required intense focus. Chen had experienced the physical and mental demands of the patrol directly. When the patrol extracted on the 6th day, Chen was exhausted in a way she had never experienced before. But Chen was also impressed with what the patrol had accomplished and with the capability that the patrol had demonstrated. When Chen returned to Nui Dat and began writing her article about the embed with the Australian patrol, she titled the article, "He Kept Me Up All Night, The Gripping Account of an Aussie Guard Duty." The title was somewhat misleading. The article was not primarily about guard duty. The article was about the extended nature of the Australian patrol operation and about how the patrol required extended periods without rest. But the title captured something true about the experience. The patrol commander, Sergeant Duncan, had kept Chen awake for extended periods through the operational requirements of the patrol. The extended periods without rest were central to the operational experience. Chen's article, when published, provided American newspaper readers with a journalist's account of what it was like to embed with an Australian patrol. The article described the slow pace. The article described the extended periods without rest. The article described the difficulty of the operation. But the article also conveyed respect for what Australian soldiers were capable of doing.
The article conveyed appreciation for the operational effectiveness of the Australian methodology. The article conveyed recognition that Australian soldiers were operating at a level of capability that required accepting physical and mental demands that exceeded what most soldiers would accept. By September 1968, Chen's article had been widely published and widely read. The article had contributed to American understanding of Australian military operations and Australian military capability. The phrase, "he kept me up all night," had taken on a particular significance. The phrase captured the demanding nature of Australian patrol operations. The phrase captured the extended periods without rest that were central to the operational experience. When other journalists interviewed Chen about her experience with the Australian patrol, they asked her about the phrase, "he kept me up all night." Chen explained that the phrase was not meant literally, but was meant to convey the demanding nature of the patrol operations. By the year 2000, Chen's article had become part of the historical record regarding American-Australian military interactions in Vietnam. The article was cited when discussions occurred about Australian military operations or about the demands of jungle warfare. One military historian referenced Chen's article when discussing the Australian patrol methodology. Chen's account provides first-hand journalistic documentation of what it was like to participate in an Australian patrol operation. Chen's account conveys the slow pace, the extended periods without rest, and the intense focus required to maintain operational security. Chen's account demonstrates that Australian patrol operations were designed around operational requirements rather than around soldier comfort or convenience. When Chen was interviewed decades later about her experience with the Australian patrol, she reflected on the significance of what she had experienced. "I learned more about military operations and military capability from 6 days with an Australian patrol than I had learned in years of embedding with American units," Chen said. The Australian patrol methodology was demanding. The patrol was difficult. But the patrol accomplished its operational objectives while remaining undetected. That was impressive. Chen continued, "The phrase, 'he kept me up all night,' was meant to be somewhat humorous. But the humor masked something more serious. The Australian patrol commander, Sergeant Duncan, had designed the operation to accomplish the mission.
The operation required extended periods without rest. The operation required intense focus. The operation required physical and mental sacrifice. Duncan kept me and the patrol awake because the mission required it.
That was the reality of Australian military operations. By the year 2020, more than 50 years after Chen had embedded with the Australian Patrol, her article remained part of military historical record. The article remained a reminder of what it was like to experience Australian Patrol operations directly. The slouch hat represented Australian military effectiveness in tactical operations. Chen's account of the Australian Patrol represented something different. It represented the human experience of Australian military operations and the demands that those operations placed on soldiers. These represented different kinds of Australian influence on American military and on American understanding of military operations. The slouch hat influenced doctrine and equipment. Chen's account influenced understanding of what military operations actually demanded of soldiers. By the year 2025, Chen's article remained one of the most frequently cited first-hand accounts of what it was like to participate in an Australian patrol operation. The article remained a reminder that military effectiveness was achieved through demanding physical and mental sacrifice. The phrase, "he kept me up all night," had entered military folklore as shorthand for describing the demanding nature of Australian patrol operations. The phrase remained associated with Sergeant Duncan and with the Australian patrol methodology that required extended periods without rest.